January in Manhattan, 2008. Chilly winds sing down Broadway and frost covers the Ivy League leaves of Columbia University, while the ice of the Bush administration finally begins to thaw. It's the heyday of the internet, and the blogosphere beckons you beyond the desktop computer in your dorm room. Look across the frozen grounds of campus, peer further than the shores of Cape Cod, and sail away with the eastern seaboard at your back. You might hear Cardigan Calypso playing alongside the syncopations of an Upper West Side Soweto and echoey tom-toms that pop like a polo collar. You might learn that you can be a prep star and a punk. You might start to give a fuck about an Oxford comma. Pretentiousness can be fun, so don't lock up the chamber music. There's joyful rhythms everywhere. They can come from anywhere and you can hear them at any time. You might stand corrected and you might not stand a chance, but you're guaranteed to dance.
Hi, I'm Julia.
And I'm Isaac.
We are friends, amateur musicians, and music lovers who believe that full albums are an art form all their own, greater than the sum of their parts.
This is For the Record, a podcast where we turn off shuffle, ditch the algorithm, and listen to one great album from start to finish.
Today, we're talking about 2008's Vampire Weekend, the self-titled debut album from Vampire Weekend. We'll break down the key themes, musical elements, history and context, and share our thoughts on the album.
Julia, I am so excited to be here talking to you about this album that I love, from a band that I love. How lucky are we?
So lucky. Oh my God. I loved this and had just kind of forgotten about it.
I think we even take this album for granted a little bit these days, or sort of lose sight of how representative it was of its time, how impactful and influential it was. Obviously Vampire Weekend has maintained some relevance in the music world.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased because I'm a huge fan and have been all the way. I mean, they were actually my number one listened to artist on Spotify last year, in part because of prepping for this podcast, wherein I listened to Vampire Weekend an embarrassing number of times.
For me, it's an insane number of times, so fair enough.
And also because they put out a great new album last year that
right.
I think even was what at first kicked off or sort of reinvigorated my love for them, and I went back through all their old albums.
No, I was surprised, but then when I re-listened to it the first time, the first of Too Many to Count, I was immediately struck by the balance between like the inaccessibility of their lyrics, like it's chock full of references, some of which even I had to look up, and I'm an East Coast kid who should in theory recognize a lot of the things they're talking about, but then it's accessible at the same time. The music is light and fun and enjoyable, and it's just such easy listening.
Totally. It's very inviting on the surface, and you don't have to scratch so far to reveal the wealth of both musical and lyrical influences that are, informing what this album sounds like. I mean,
for me, absolutely, this is the quintessential indie album.
Certainly of the 2000s.
Absolutely.
Late 2000s, yeah.
But anyway, I think we should take a step back. Can you tell me a little bit about Vampire Weekend?
I would love to. So Vampire Weekend was formed in 2006 at Columbia University. All 4 founding members were classmates. 2, I believe, were studying music.
Yeah.
2 were not. But they bonded over shared love of, I don't know. Shared love of music. Yeah. And
we weren't there, but we think so.
Well, I know that 2 of them, Ezra and I think Chris Baio, were in like a rap group together.
Oh, that's so funny.
And bonded over hip hop or something.
Okay, so we have Ezra Koenig.
Right, so Ezra Koenig is the lead singer, primary songwriter, guitarist, and to this day sort of I think is the spokesperson of the band.
Yeah, frontman, you could say.
Yeah, exactly. Then we've got Chris Baio on bass, Chris Thompson on the drums, and now former member Rostam Batmangli as a multi-instrumentalist and primary producer. So who's your favorite member of Vampire Weekend?
So, okay, I know that this is not a popular choice because Ezra is very famous, but I think I've always had a soft spot for Rostam because did you know he also produced Haim's album, Women in Music Part 3, and he was nominated for a Grammy for that.
I did know that. More than that, I know that you love that album.
Yeah, so. Shout out my girls. But, this was his start, and I think even to get to that place and to know that like this album in some way had an impact on that album, I think is really interesting for me.
Totally. Yeah. And, he's no longer in the band, but his influence on their sound as the primary producer, and so much of what makes these songs compelling is the way they're sort of constructed from different sounds.
He's a genius.
He found that sound, obviously, with the help of the band, but he was the one who brought it to life, and his contributions are definitely important. That being said,
who's your favorite?
I'm an Ezra head through and through. I mean, I think I just feel a kinship with him, like a Northeast Jew, bit nerdy. I think we, have some of the same influences. Maybe I'm self-identifying a little bit too much, but I have to come clean and admit that I wrote a song about Ezra Koenig once, inspired by him. It's also a little bit about me, but he's an inspiration.
Ezra, if you're listening, Isaac's number is...
Yeah, call me Ezra. I'm a big fan. Anyways, one more name to call out is actually the name of the band, which has an interesting backstory,
right,
which I'm going to toss over to you, Julia.
Vampire Weekend was actually a movie that Ezra Koenig filmed in college, I think, and it was called Vampire Weekend. It was about this guy named Walcott, who is one of the tracks on this album, whose dad gets killed by vampires, and he has to go to Cape Cod to like warn the mayor of Cape Cod that vampires are attacking the country. And they basically made this like home movie for 2 days. No one ever saw it, but there is a trailer on YouTube that you can watch.
A home movie is such a fitting origin story for this name, because this was really, a homespun band, a homespun album. They started just playing shows on Columbia's campus. I think Ezra had been writing music for himself for a while and had some material to bring to the band, and they booked basement shows and frat parties to test run these songs, workshop them, get their 10,000 hours. All the while, they're recording some songs in bedrooms and basements and a little bit here and maybe some
Mom's
strings layered
living room.
over elsewhere. Yeah, they recorded at one of the members' family barns, one of the family's mom's house. I can picture, the shut up, mom, we're recording moments of those recording sessions.
So now let's jump to 2007. All 4 band members have graduated by now. And Vampire Weekend puts out the single Cape Cod Kwassa Kwassa, which brought them out of the basement and threw them very suddenly into the spotlight when Rolling Stone magazine ranked it 67th on their best songs of 2007.
Wow, that's wild.
Keep in mind, at this point, they haven't put out this album. They haven't put out any album. They're still working day jobs. I think Ezra was working as a high school English teacher. So they're very much still an underground band. So to have had your only released single make it onto a list like that is impressive for a band who's really just finding their footing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big part of that sort of sudden discovery has to do with the growing influence of the blogosphere and the sort of hype that world could bring any band, and Vampire Weekend just happened to be a band that got caught in those gears, and indie music blogs and publications really took to them and hyped them up. So there was a lot of hype around them. There was a lot of potential, which certainly puts pressure on a band, and they certainly met. I mean, we're here 5 albums, 2 Grammy Awards, 16 years later, and they've been a mainstay of indie rock ever since. I mean, I think they're still really relevant. They're still interesting. Their sound always evolves, but is ultimately always anchored to an inherent Vampire Weekend-ness is the only way I can put it. And we'll try and maybe describe a little bit more what that means. And looking back on this album, I mean, it's hard for any album to be totally indicative of a band that has a decade-spanning career. But one of the things that I really love about this album, and I think makes it interesting to talk about, is that it announced Vampire Weekend as a band with a real confidence and sense of brand and, thematic cohesion that ties it together. Like, it's a real thesis statement album.
Okay, so setting the stage, it is 2008.
I'm 11 years old and at the time, not a Vampire Weekend fan yet.
No, I don't think I was either. I know for a fact that I had A-Punk, the song, on my iPod because it was alphabetized. Like at the time, all of our music libraries were alphabetized. And so that always came on first. So that was like the only song that I knew.
First of all, well done, Vampire Weekend, for gaming the system so that their song would play first on everyone's iPod shuffling.
Yeah, genius.
But that's actually a good point, I think, to talk about just the music landscape in general at 2008 and the role that things like being able to download a song onto an iPod had on the music world. Something that you had mentioned and we were talking about earlier is the fact that this album lands in that unique window between Napster and Spotify.
Right.
And
Spotify also launches in 2008, just for everyone to know.
you know, they had the benefit of the internet to promote them and share their music to people even before they had put out an album. It brought them hype. It brought them attention and, you know, made people look when this album finally dropped.
What else was happening in 2008 in the music world?
Well, this is the heyday of indie rock, not just of the internet, but of indie rock as well. And as you said, like this album is, I think, one of the most indicative of that 2000s boom. Some other albums that came out that year were Fleet Fox's self-titled debut. The Kings of Leon put out an album, Only by the Night. Oasis put out Dig Out Your Soul.
Oh, wow. They're back.
They're back now. It's crazy.
We've come full circle.
Yeah. Portishead put out an album, as did Kanye West. He was nominated for a whole bunch of Grammys.
Well, I think 8. I think he was nominated for 8 Grammys that year. Lil Wayne put out an album, The Carter 3. The #1 hit song, Lollipop. Yeah.
For me, Vampire Weekend is among the music from this era with the most staying power. I sense, looking back on this era, it's a bit of a, I don't know, the 2000s were a bit of an awkward time culturally, stylistically.
Personally for me.
The 90s were so cool and so creatively fulfilling. And the 2000s, that's a tough act to follow.
Oh, for sure.
And you can, I think, feel that in some of the music, like the way auto-tune is coming in, the way, I don't know, production styles are changing. And Vampire Weekend was, you know, compared to that landscape, fresh and very organic, not a lot of synths or electronic production, raw, simple sounds combined to make something greater than the sum of their parts.
Right. I think, though, what is interesting about 2008, before we move on, is the Best Album Grammy went to Robert Plant and Alison Krauss. So for those who don't know, Robert Plant was from Led Zeppelin.
Lead singer.
Yeah. And Alison Krauss, I mean, she's just wonderful. She's a bluegrass country singer. It's sort of like the old guard is reaching the end of their time. From 2008 onwards, we start to see a shift in nominations. And I think, like you said, heyday for indie music is now.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an interesting comparison to think about, you know, these two older legends collaborating. You know, maybe it's kind of a legacy nod for them to win this.
Yeah.
But
for Raising Sand specifically.
But Vampire Weekend marks this shift towards an internet-based type of music. You know, it's the year that Spotify launches. Streaming is about to change things forever.
Yeah.
The barriers to entry for musicians to get their music out there are just going to continue to drop.
Yeah, and I think the flip side, of course, is the risk of oversaturation and a much noisier music landscape overall, where it's much harder for indie bands to make the same splash that Vampire Weekend did.
Good luck to those who may try.
With that, I think we should get into some of the music.
I think that's a great idea.
I have a quote here from a guy who writes for Pitchfork, and I cannot pronounce his name, and I'm afraid to say it out loud. Nitsu Abebe. I don't know. But anyway, I'm so sorry, Nitsu. He wrote, "Bring any baggage you want to this record, and it still returns nothing but warm, airy, low gimmick pop, peppy, clever, and yes, unpretentious. 4 guys who listened to some Afro-pop records, picked up a few nice ideas, and then set about making one of the most refreshing and replayable indie records in recent years."
I would agree with that statement.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. So for those of you who haven't listened to the album or have listened to it and don't quite know what to make of it.
Yet. For those who haven't listened yet.
If you're listening to this episode
please,
and haven't listened to the album,
please go and
you're
do
ridiculous. That. This album is notable for its blending of indie music, pop, melodies, and sounds with world music influenced instrumentation. I mean, it pulls from South African rhythms in a way that you could compare to Paul Simon's Graceland or Peter Gabriel's So, albums that don't sound like this, but just the acknowledgement of that influence earned a lot of comparisons between Vampire Weekend and those artists in the press.
Yeah. I mean, someone accused Vampire Weekend of stealing like Graceland's ideas. And I think Paul Simon had to come defend them and say, hey, I listened to the record. It doesn't sound like my record. Everything's good.
I think ideas are the only thing you could accuse them of stealing because the music doesn't sound the same, but it toys with the lineage of appropriation, both in the music itself and in the lyrical themes in a really thoughtful way.
Right.
Just to give a glimpse into Ezra's kind of state of mind and influence when writing this album, I found a quote where he says, I'd taken a trip to India the year before, stopped in London for a few days on the way there. It got me thinking a lot about colonialism and the aesthetic connections between preppy culture and the native cultures of places like Africa and India. And that, I think, sums up the two strains of this album. Critics either accused them of being too preppy and white bread or being too reliant on appropriated rhythms and music from around the world.
Yeah,
and
which is it, guys?
The truth, I think the truth exists in the middle. Yeah. And it's what the tension between those things, which they come by earnestly, like they don't shy away from the privilege that they bring to this as Ivy League students, as highly educated, intelligent people, but there's a self-awareness to that. You know, they're acknowledging, even in some of the lyrics,
right,
that these are borrowed, but also are ultimately relevant. Like there is a connection between colonialism and a place like Columbia University, you know, these historically white places of privilege, a place where they have the opportunity to form a band like Vampire Weekend, but you know, there's a dark history there, and they capture both.
Definitely. And I think we can touch upon this more when we break down some of the themes. But for me, I just like that they are authentic. They're not shying away from their background. They're not pretending to be people they aren't. And I think a criticism that another contemporary indie band, The Strokes, got at this time was The Strokes, I think similarly, are from New York City. They were also highly educated prep school kids who didn't feel like that was very rock and roll. And I think we're trying to sort of bury that and sort of have more of like a grunge feel. And then people sort of came to feel like maybe that's not as authentic.
Sometimes it's better to be genuine, even if you don't think people like who you are.
So true.
Thanks for the lesson, Vampire Weekend. But the way that comes across is in an album that's bright and clean, but still very raw and simplistic. For me, it's really marked by Ezra's non-sequitorial lyrics. He strings together ideas and themes and images in the way that almost reminds me of Soviet montage, a filmmaking idea where you show two otherwise unrelated or non-cinematically or narratively connected images back to back,
right,
but people create associations between them. And I think it makes it powerful without being preachy. Ezra gives you these ideas and lets you come to the conclusions on your own, but they're only there if you want to find them. Like if you want to pair what, Darjeeling tea and Benetton fabrics have to do with one another, the connections are all there.
Yeah.
But at the on the surface level, they're just catchy lyrics with words that roll off the tongue nicely.
Dear listener, Isaac's referencing the brand United Colors of Benetton. I think they made tennis clothes and other all sorts of preppy clothes. Anyway.
I learned about them from this album. I think that's maybe a good jumping off point to talk about some of the themes in this album, which are tied to all of these things we've been talking about. So kick us off.
Well, I think I found it interesting that the themes in this were so narrative. For me, the main themes were probably class and identity and colonialism. Is colonialism a theme? I don't know. It's present.
I think in this album it certainly is.
What themes did you have?
I agree with all the ones you said before. I even added pretentiousness itself as a theme, not just because there's a sense in which some of these songs are pretentious, but
Right.
they are very, like everything in this album, very self-aware of their, I guess you'd call it pretentiousness. You know, the fact that they are probably smarter than you and they're very good at what they do. You know, they're these elite students and they make fun of it. You know, they sing about Oxford commas. Like, who gives a fuck about an Oxford comma?
Me,
Like,
kind of me.
I'm
Set
a
the record
strong
straight.
proponent of the Oxford comma. I use it unless explicitly instructed by an editor or a religious leader to do otherwise. I always use the Oxford comma. It just feels, why would you gamble with that clarity? You know, it just makes more sense to me. It's all about that exclusivity. Just this makes me think of something that I love about the album cover itself, which, you know, even before you've stuck it in your CD player and pressed play, like it gives you a feeling like you're being let in on a secret. It's a picture of a chandelier at a building in Colombia. It houses one of their secret societies, and it looks like it's taken by someone who maybe wasn't supposed to be taking pictures.
The tops of the heads.
Yeah, you can't see
anybody.
faces, right? And you know, you're in this institution of higher learning, and it's just about what they know, not who they are. And yet there is this presence, this like higher knowledge, even above them, represented by the chandelier. It just feels so raw and dynamic and evocative of what the album is about, a place of access and privilege. And
I think, though, they do that with a sense of irony and detachment.
totally.
Like they're poking fun at wealth, status, cultural elitism, but they also came from
Right. No, it doesn't
these
feel
places.
it doesn't feel like they're shying away from that.
Yeah.
It feels like they're leaning in
Yeah.
and questioning it and saying, this is who we are. You know it. We know it. We're not going to pretend otherwise.
What I do think is really interesting is sort of a lack of focus on love and relationships in this album. It doesn't play a huge part in their lyrics. They speak on the complexities of relationships and communication, but it always feels very detached and like not a main focus really of any of the songs.
That's a really good point. I mean, we're so attuned to love songs in pop music. You know, they're everywhere. They're some of the easiest songs to write. And that's speaking from personal experience, you know, we'll take inspiration wherever we can get it.
Right.
We songwriters. You're right. They don't write songs about love or romantic relationships. Interpersonal relationships and romance are features of the worlds they're building. They happen in this world, but like everything else in these songs and this album, they kind of exist in conversation with wider global experiences. You know, a crush on some girl in campus is not just, you know, feelings for someone. It's part of your experience of being
the collegiate experience.
Yeah, collegiate experience and the elitism of that. And it's what I was saying before, how he pairs images together sort of side by side. You could read it just as having a crush on a girl, or you could, you know, peel back the layers and see something much wider.
I think it's always interesting to think about, why did an artist pick this track to be the opener for their album?
You're right, and there are good opening songs and there are bad opening songs. I think Mansard Roof is a great one. It's really inviting, opens the door to what this album is all about.
Who doesn't want to hear a song about the Falkland War?
I didn't know I needed to until I did.
It's so niche, and I love that they did that.
Yeah, but even just that, of course, is like the deeper themes that it delves into through the song, but just there's something about those opening organ hits. There's three little bump, bump, bump.
Yeah.
They're very organic sounding and woody and open, but they also have kind of low tech synthy quality. Like you can it feels like a sound that you might find on a synth recording in your mom's basement or something.
Well, also the percussion. It sounds like a horse marching through the streets. Yeah, exactly.
It's a song about peeling back the layers on privilege, quite literally. I mean,
imperialism.
You're peering through the trees at this at a mansard roof, which is kind of classic Northeast Cape Cod architectural style.
Absolutely. Also, just a nice way to expand your home without adding another floor.
Well said, Julia. Yeah, the design tip we didn't know we needed. And if it says like strap in, we're going to sing about architecture and we're going to sing about the Falkland War and we're going to make it bright and
catchy.
fun and catchy.
Yeah.
But if you're not here for the mix of those two things, like get ready because this album's chock full of it.
Yeah. And it's funny, actually, I realized we didn't say, I said colonialism as a theme, but not Cape Cod. What was I thinking?
Cape Cod is a character in this story.
Yeah.
Not only because that's where Walcott has to escape from the vampires. But I think that's actually a good chance to turn to the next song I wanted to flag, which is Cape Cod Kwassa Kwassa. I mean, it's literally in the name. And for me, this is the thesis statement song of the whole album. I mean, it's in the name, it pairs Cape Cod, which is this bastion of American privilege and a kind of white bread culture that is very roped in with the Vampire Weekend preppy brand and style.
It's a preppy place.
The second half of the name is Kwassa Kwassa, which is the name of a traditional dance from the Congo.
Yeah.
And it opens with a riff that owes itself to
Calypso.
Yeah, and Soweto, South African rhythms. And that's kind of what their the Vampire Weekend project is all about, bridging that gap, A line that I think is worth noting in this song is the line, but it feels so unnatural, Peter Gabriel too, which, Peter Gabriel alongside Paul Simon was one of the...
Explain to the listeners who Peter Gabriel is.
So Peter Gabriel was singer, songwriter, huge in the 80s. And one of his biggest albums, was known for its use of African rhythms and just international world music sounds in a pop album.
Yeah.
Like Graceland, Paul Simon's album that did very much the same thing. It brought a lot of these sounds to listeners and exposed them to new styles while still being, very new and very pop friendly and listenable. Both were and still are kind of controversial for the way that they kind of handled the appropriative aspects of taking ideas from foreign musicians, from musicians with less privilege than you.
Yeah. Brave of them to draw the line themselves.
Yeah, they're beating the critics to the punch. They're saying, we know that this is not the first time this has happened. Peter Gabriel too. He did it too. And yes, it feels unnatural. Like it's a strange marriage of sounds and ideas, this preppy Northeast culture with, music from Africa, but it speaks to their self-awareness and the fact that they hit the ground with a sense of themselves.
I couldn't agree more. I also think that we should move into categories. Isaac, what was your favorite song?
My favorite song is The Kids Don't Stand a Chance.
Ugh, Isaac.
The final song on this album.
That's also my favorite song.
Well,
we can't choose the same one.
It happened naturally, so I guess we can't. There's nothing we can do about it. I did not know this was going to be your favorite song as well. But like all of these songs, it's catchy. It's lyrically impressive. It's an uncertain song. It feels like, this is almost a coming of age album.
Yeah, definitely.
It feels like they're sending themselves off into the world. The hook of that song is "The kids don't stand a chance." That's the last lyric of this album. So for it to close with this notion of them being the kids and they're going out into the world, they're leaving this sort of safe space of Columbia that nurtured them, and they're questioning, where do we go from here? We exist in a history that has the slave trade tarnishing its legacy, and we're products of privilege and a culture that we're lucky to be exposed to, but it's the real world is tough and dark, and do we stand a chance?
I hope so. I think for me, touching more on like the musical side, something interesting I noticed listening to this album, 15 years later, as an adult, I gravitate towards different songs than my teenage self did, like re-listening to the album. And I find myself pulling away from like the classic early 2000s indie sound and more, I don't know, the ones with the strings that sound a bit more timeless. I mean, classical elements remain timeless, whereas the indie sound maybe has aged a bit.
That's a great point.
And I think, I don't know, just this song really spoke to me.
It's also very sparse, at least in the verses.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a bass, a tom-tom, and Ezra's lyrics. So it really lets the catchiness of the melody shine and the poignancy of the lyrics shine through. And then the chorus sort of opens up into this, like you're saying, classically arranged, I think a harpsichord that is very jangly and it has some breathing room that some parts of this album, maybe even some of the more indie rock forward parts of this album don't have, and it's a nice breath to end the album with. So I think we both
made a
picked
good
it as our
choice.
favorite for good reasons.
Kids don't stand a copyright problem.
What about your least favorite song?
Okay, it's hard because it's such a wonderful album, but one stood out to me, and listening through the album many, many, many times, I did pick the same least favorite every time, whereas I think my favorite song shifted back and forth. Least favorite, I Stand Corrected. I didn't find it as clever or as interesting. It doesn't stand out to me in any way. When you consider how incredible this album is, I think it's almost surprising that there's a song that doesn't have much to add or offer. And it's not a bad song. It just doesn't fit for me with this album.
We are once and again agreement. I Stand Corrected is my least favorite song as well. And again, it's not a bad song, but it's almost it speaks to what little immaturity you can hear in this album, you know,
right?
What maybe holds it back from the difference between a great debut album versus like just a great album. And I think this is both, but there are some songs where maybe you would have cut them or at least like placed them differently in the flow in hindsight. And for me, this is the one that just stands out as the weakest.
I'm cutting it.
Not bad. What about a road trip?
What about a road trip?
Would you listen to this album on one?
Absolutely, I would. Okay, here's the problem. The album is less than 40 minutes long. They managed to really stuff a bunch of themes and complex lyrics and beautiful tunes and riffs into this compact, I think it's like 34 minutes. Someone fact check me, but it's not very long. So really you would need to listen to it like 3 or 4 times in a row, which I don't know if someone wants to do. Short answer is yes. I would road trip to this album.
I would agree. And I think a lot of that has to do with these interesting rhythms. Like, you know, we were talking about the horse gallop drums, like that there is a propulsiveness purely just in the sound alone, the sonic qualities of this album. So we agree. Yes. Road trip.
Yeah. What about drink pairing?
My drink pairing, I think, would just be some Darjeeling tea. Something cozy, something international and worldly, but, you know, something you might have at home in your cabinet.
Dramatic much?
Yeah.
Very. I think for me, didn't think about it that deeply. It's an iced vanilla latte. So I don't know. I can just picture a crisp fall morning, but it's you know it's going to be hotter later in the day. You might want to unwrap your scarf a little, and still iced coffee season and a hint of sweetness. That's what I want.
There's something very Upper West Side about a drink like that. I can see myself, you know, walking through Central Park in the fall.
Yeah, but you're not going to have an iced vanilla latte. You're going to be having an Americano.
I will be having an Americano. I
you
drink hot black coffee.
All year round.
All year round.
Like a lunatic.
Dear listener, don't read into that. All right, Julia, we're at the karaoke bar. Someone flicks through the Vampire Weekend section for some reason. Although I'm not sure many people are doing karaoke or Vampire Weekend at karaoke night, but what song would you pick?
Okay. I feel like A-Punk it's got to be the choice. Like, I love Oxford Comma. I think everyone knows the lines, but I think it's a bit too slow for karaoke. I just like the punch that A-Punk has.
You're probably right. I think for the sake of not continually picking the same thing, I'm going to say Oxford Comma would be my song.
Okay.
Because it is one that more people are prone to know, and it's got some fun lyrics. The idea of singing, the if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And whatever, yelling, who gives a fuck about an Oxford Comma at some like drunk middle-aged people at karaoke night.
No need to be pedantic. Yeah, like, just shout it from the rooftops. From
so
your mansard roofs.
That would be my choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you're giving the aux at a party? what are you putting on for everyone else where you don't have to sing it yourself?
Here I'm going with A-Punk. It's just the one that, even people who aren't fans of Vampire Weekend are going to know it. It's very upbeat,
Yeah. I mean, you can really catch people's attention with it because it's familiar. Totally. I think I would pick Cape Cod Kwassa Kwassa. I think I just like it a bit more. It kind of gives me coffee shop vibes, which I guess that's some kind of party, not everyone's kind of party. And The Kids Don't Stand a Chance is like a bit last call vibes. But otherwise, I just would love to hear it at a party. What were your favorite lyrics from the whole album? I know you have tons of favorites.
This is really hard for me because Ezra is one of my favorite lyricists of all time.
Wow.
But one that jumps out at me is from Oxford Comma. All your diction dripping with disdain. Through the pain, I always tell the truth. And this one I think is even less. It's not one of the thematically dense lines that we keep talking about in this album. It's
face value.
It's more face value, but just the alliteration of diction dripping with disdain, the way that description of a conversation and how much it tells you about the relationship between two people. I don't know. It's just good, efficient songwriting. It rolls off the tongue and feels good in the mouth. And that, as much as, you can cram as many ideas into a song as you'd like, but there is a certain aesthetic quality to good lyrics that this album has as well.
Yeah. I mean, my favorite lyrics are also from Oxford Comma. I have, why would you lie about how much coal you have? Why would you lie about something dumb like that? Why would you lie about anything at all? And I think it's interesting that your lyrics focused on truth and mine focused on the lies. But this is something I quote to myself all the time. Like, this exists for me, like, so out of context in the world, not related to the Vampire Weekend song. Like, whenever I, think about like telling a white lie, even if it's like, I don't know, to save someone's feelings or just if I don't feel like going somewhere. And then I always think to myself, why would you lie about something dumb like that? Why would you lie about anything at all? It just kind of keeps me in check.
Why would you lie in a world where Lil Jon always tells the truth?
It's such a good point. If he can do it, I can do it.
Amen. All right, Julia, we're getting down to the wire where it's time for us to
rate the album.
Not that I think people at this point can probably tell that we got mad love for this album. We talked a little bit about the reception to this album in its time. So I have a quote here from a 10-year anniversary review of this album.
Okay, from 2018.
It goes from 2018. It reads, I'd tell you to imagine the think pieces Vampire Weekend would generate if they arrived freshly on the scene today. But you don't have to imagine them because they were written 10 years ago. In Koenig and Company, some people heard the end of a long gentrification process that turned indie rock from a scraggly, combustible underground, ostensibly low-budget enterprise into a clean-cut lifestyle product for the bourgeoisie.
Wow, says it all.
Even critics reflecting on the early criticism agree the extent to which this was a thesis statement. Like, they really hit the ground fully formed. Obviously, that's easier to see in hindsight, seeing how the band progressed and the fact that they never let go of some of the themes and musical approaches to their albums. But
yeah,
it's just an album that's held up really, really well.
Okay. And what's your rating?
Strong 9 out of 10. And I leave it at a 9 almost purely because there are other Vampire Weekend albums that are 10s for me.
Wow.
And I think they're a little bit better than this. It's some of that immaturity that we spoke about before. Not that there's any sort of specific thing that you can point to, like, this is objectively bad.
Yeah.
There's just something I think that holds it back from their full potential.
Yeah. So Rolling Stone ranked this 24th on their list of the 100 greatest debut albums of all time, saying that they, inspired a wave of indie bands with the world music influences. Even though they had largely criticized the album when it first came out, I think Rolling Stone really came around. It was ranked 56th on their best albums of the decade list, which I think could potentially be too low. My personal rating for the album, I think today I'm landing at 9.5. I know when we had spoken about it before, I'd said 9. But after listening to it 20 times, it only continues to grow on me. I don't get tired of it. And I think just for that reason, I have to raise mine to 9.5. But I haven't listened so much to the other Vampire Weekend albums. So maybe it will shift. I don't know. At this time, I'm calling it 9.5.
Opinions are allowed to change, Julia. And I love that you love this album and I love this album. And I'm glad we got to talk about it today.
Well, it has been a pleasure to sit here and talk about Vampire Weekend's Vampire Weekend with you.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week. You can find us on Instagram at For The Record Podcast with underscores in between every word. And you can email us at 4 as in the number, D as in the letter,
Diana.
Record Podcast. That's 4D Record Podcast at gmail.com. Julia, I have a theory about the song One, parentheses, Blake's Got a New Face.
Okay, is it a conspiracy theory or a theory?
It's a conspiracy theory. No one knows how high this goes.
Okay.
But I think that song is about Blake Lively's nose job.
Oh.
Blake's got a new face.
Well, this album came out in 2008. You know who got a nose job in 2008?
Was it Blake Lively?
It was
I
Blake
rest my
Lively.
case, listeners.